I've just recorded a student request lesson in the end by Linkin Park. One of the things I mentioned in the lesson was that we're going to need to use a capo in order to make what we play sound the same as what's on the record. So what I mean by that is the chords that we play will fit along with the record. Now, what is a capo? Why have I had to do that? And what's the benefit of doing that? A capo, basically, it's going to alter the open tuning of the guitar, where we've got the nut on the guitar down here. That's the lowest point that you can play. The lowest note on every string you can play is down at the nut. So obviously on the E string, that's an E. I can't play anything lower than that because the nut dictates the lowest note. Same with all the other strings: A, D, G, B, E. So my open strings all are relative to the nut down here on the guitar. In the song that I've recorded, in the end, the chords that are used on the song are more complicated, that you can't achieve all of them with open chords. So in this example, the first chord of in the end is actually an E flat minor. Now, we can play an E minor, quite simply, down there. If we want to play an E flat minor, it gets a little bit more complicated. So an E flat, we're going to play the chord one fret down than what we'd normally play. So we're flattening the chord by one fret. I can't do that because the nut's there, so I can't move that chord any further down. There's other ways I can play the chord. The way that I'd play the chord personally, if I was asked to, I'd play a bar chord to make that chord, which would be an E flat minor. Now, that's fine if you're comfortable playing bar chords, if you've got experience with playing bar chords and more complicated variants of chords, that's great. But we can use the capo. It's not really cheating, but we're using it to make it easier for us to play the progression without having to resort to using more difficult chords. So again, for the example of In the End, the chords that I showed on the song were simple open chords: A minor, G, an F, and a C. Those are quite easily playable and accessible for beginners upwards, basically, so they're quite simple chords. The actual chords played on the song, as I say, are a little bit more difficult to achieve. So we started with the E flat minor, which I will play just there as a bar, E flat minor. The next chord then would be a C sharp. Again, I'd use a bar to play that. Then a B. I can either play a bar, or I can even play a root B, and then finally an F sharp, which would be a bar. Or we can take an F and just move it up to an F sharp. So they are playable. If you're more experienced, you won't have too much difficulty playing them, but if you're not at that level yet where you're playing the bar chords, it's simpler to stick with the root chords. However, if we play those root chords, they will not fit along with the song. So if I add a capo to the guitar, I can change the pitch of where I'm playing those chords to make them fit with the song. So in this instance, let's use my capo. It's a cheap and cheerful little guy. It's basically just a straight bar that's going to go across the fret of my guitar wherever I want it to. In the case of this song, In the End, I'm going to apply the capo to the 6th fret. The capo just basically has the same effect. Just before I put it on, it's the same effect as putting your finger as a bar across there. So rather than your open string sounding like that, it will sound like that. So I'll put the capo on. That saves me having to use my finger to make a bar. So I'm going to put it on the 6th fret, like that. Once you put it on, just make sure your strings are sounding normally. Just have a fiddle with the position of it, just make sure that's a bit can hear there my E string's a bit fluffy. I think this isn't a brilliant capo. I think it's not quite on tight enough to push the string down. So luckily, it's a bit like a belt. I can tighten up a little bit further by pulling it on another notch. I'll do that. And my notes are a little bit cleaner. So once the capo's on, we're going to forget about this portion of the guitar under the capo. This doesn't exist. The nut on the guitar is now here. That's acting as my nut. So I'm going to pretend that that's my nut, and I'm going to play my open chords as I normally would, using that as my nut reference. So in the example that I'm doing of In the End by Linkin Park, the first chord that I showed on the lesson was A minor. I can use the same A minor shape that I would use down here, but rather than playing it down here, because that's not going to work because the capo, nothing down here works below the capo. I'm going to pretend that's my nut, make my A minor shape here, and I can play that E flat minor chord just by using my A minor shape. Again, the second chord in the End chord list is a C sharp. Now we don't have any open C sharp strings, which is why I used a bar, but once we've got the capo on, I can play a G chord, which is what I showed in the lesson, and that gives us the equivalent of what we need because we've changed the pitch of the strings. Then we go to an F chord, which I played as an open B without the capo, and then finally the C chord, which would be, if I wasn't using the capo, I'd need to play an F sharp, which I played as either the bar F sharp or just move my F chord up a fret to get the F sharp. Once you've got the capo on, you read the music as if you were playing in the open position. So if you see an A minor, you play an A minor, but up here using that as your pretend nut. On the Linkin Park song, there's a little riff as well, exactly the same with that. With the capo on, you play the riff exactly as I've described it and shown it, using that as the nut in this instance. And it will fit with the way that it's been recorded with Linkin Park. Just one tip we're using the capo. I did mention that once you've put it on, make sure that all of your strings sound clean, otherwise you'll never get them to sound clean if they don't sound clean just with the capo on its own. So if you're not used to using it, I'll hold my hand up. I'm not massively experienced with using this, which is probably why I've got a cheap and basic capo. There are better ones than this that are probably easier to just set up and make sure it's playing cleanly. I just had to fiddle with it a little bit to get it right. The other tip is as well, once you've put the capo on, it might just be worth your while checking the tuning on the guitar again, because obviously we're pushing down on the strings here. We've applied something to the neck, so if you just want to be super careful about your tuning, check your tuning again. But the notes are not going to be the same as they would be when you're tuning open strings. If you're tuning your open strings, you should know that when you put your tuner on, or on your phone, or whichever way you want to do it, the notes that you're looking for across your strings are E, A, D, G, B, and again E repeated for your little string. Because I've got the capo on, that changes things. Everything's moved up 6 frets, which means 6 half notes, 6 semitones. So in this example, if I was to try and check my tuning with the capo on now to make sure that my guitar's still in tune, once I've applied that, the notes I'd be looking for would be, that would be an A sharp or a B flat, that would be a D sharp or E flat, depending on which way you want to call the note, then a G sharp or an A flat, C sharp or D flat, F, and then back to A sharp, B flat, which is the same as your, obviously, your thick string. So make sure your capo's on, notes are playing nice and clean. If you want to check your tuning, make sure that you're playing in tune. Or if it sounds wrong when you're playing it, maybe that's the time to check your tuning. But basically the capo is there to make our lives easier so that we can play open chords and recreate the song as it's played by the artist without having to stretch around playing bar chords and more complicated version of the chords. If you see professional artists playing a guitar live or on a concert or a show, and they're not using a capo, but you've seen the music and it says use a capo, it may well be that they've tuned the guitar differently to achieve the same effect without having to use a capo, which is great if you're a professional and you can afford to switch out your guitar to your technician in between songs and get another guitar that's tuned right for you. But for us, I've only got the one guitar. I don't want to change the tuning because then when I finish doing in the end, I'll have to tune it back to normal or to whatever else I want to play next. So rather than mess about with my tuning, the easiest thing to do is put my capo on. When I finish practicing that song, I can just take the capo off. Excuse me, I dropped it. And then my guitar is back to normal. Down there, so I can carry on playing whatever I want to play without messing about with the tuning of the guitar.